Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1985 drama, The Trip to Bountiful. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to Dark Metal Spider for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, The Trip to Bountiful is based on a teleplay, I believe from either was a TV movie or was a project that was optioned in, I believe, the 40s or 50s. It was then turned into a play, and this is honestly pretty evident in terms of the way that it's set up and it's structured. It definitely has this very old-fashioned uh, structure when it comes to the setup, because it was a play in the 50s by Horton Foote, who also wrote the script for this, by the way. And so it does have that kind of vibe. But since it is a throwback film and it is a film that in essence is a period piece, it having this feel and this overall uh, vibe of a movie from that period is actually rather inspired. And it actually is something that benefits the film instead of detracting from it. It's directed by Peter Masterson, and this was his directorial debut. After this, he did a few other projects. He did a pretty decent thriller with Roy Scheider called Night Game. He also did some other dramas. But I would probably say this is the one that probably got him the most recognition because of the fact that Geraldine Page, who played the lead in this, Carrie Watts, she was nominated for an Oscar for her performance in the film. And so, because of that, there was a certain amount of accolades and certain amount of appreciation that Peter Masterson got for his work in the film. I think his direction is fine. This is a very old fashioned, very straightforward kind of movie. It's not a film that really is going to dazzle you with the visuals, but he does a decent enough job capturing the setting, capturing the time period. Uh, I feel he does a really good job getting some very authentic and very strong performances out of his cast, not just from Geraldine Page, who went on to win the Academy Award for her performance, but the other supporting actors as well, especially John Hurd. And it's not a film that is very flashy. There's not a lot of different sort of camera techniques that are employed here. There's maybe a few different types of establishing shots. There's some moments where the camera might move a little bit, but a lot of it's very set up in a way where it's a lot closer to the staging of a stage play. And so if it's not trying to showcase the breadth of a particular setting, like Miss Watts's dilapidated, worn down former home, it is kind of rigid in terms of the way that it's shot. And so I can see why some people might look at the movie due to the way that it's directed and the way that it's set up that it's a TV movie, but it's not. It was actually a film that got a theatrical release in 1985. Apparently, it did all right. I mean, it made $7 million in the box office. So for a film that probably didn't cost that much to make, that's a pretty decent success. And yeah, I think I do. I feel the direction is serviceable. It's decent. It works for the kind of film that it is. And it's not the type of direction that's going to win any awards, but it's rather even keeled. And it's also not something that's like tonally inconsistent or visually inconsistent. It's just a job well done when it comes to the directing for this movie. The screenplay by Horton Foote, on the other hand, I've never read his play. I've never seen the play, but I feel that he did a excellent job adapting his play here. Because whatever sensibilities, whatever strength of the play, those definitely wind up in the script. They wind up on the screen. You could tell that he knew what he was working with. He was very familiar with it, and as a result, you get a screenplay that's really solid and genuinely great. And this isn't the kind of story or the kind of film that I'm normally that into. I got to be honest. I probably would have never watched this film if it wasn't for this being a request. But I thought it was a very sweet, very charming, and a legitimately good story about a older woman in Carrie Watts who's been cooped up and stuck in her son's apartment with her son's wife, who just for whatever reason has no patience with this older woman, has no understanding of what she's going through, is selfish, is vain, is pretty much everything you can think of when it comes to a stuck up kind of character. And the script does a really good job making you sympathize with Miss Watts. Like, you understand why she risks her life trying to go back home to Bountiful, because she is up there in age, her health isn't the best, and that's what I mean by risking her life. By taking this trip, she's risking everything. She's risking her life because her heart is weak and she's got other health problems. But she wants to see her old home. She wants to see the town that she grew up in one last time before she passes on. And she just has this urge, this desire to go and see Bountiful again. And she's actually been trying to do it for a while, but for whatever reason, her son won't take her there, and the 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 son's wife will not let her, and she won't take her anywhere, Jessie May. And so she just one day decides, okay, Jessie May's gone, so is my son. I'm going to try to make a run for it again. I'm going to try to go to Bountiful. And unlike the previous times, she actually gets away. She stays one step ahead of Jessie May and her son. And along the way, she also makes a new friend. She makes a new connection with this young woman named Thelma. And the writing between those two and the scenes between those two is really sweet and genuinely heartfelt. And it's a story that I think can speak to a lot of people, especially if you're someone who's moved away from home and you're nostalgic and you're dreaming of and reminiscing about days gone by. And this film creates a good contrast when it comes to the screenplay and the story of what you have in your head and what the reality can be. And the reality can sometimes be really bittersweet. And the scenes where Watts finally sees her her home again are really sad, but there's a certain poignancy to it because the house may be in ill repair. The house may be pretty much just a shack at this point, but the memories live on through whatever remaining days that Miss Watts has on this earth and through her son. And it just makes you think about a lot of other instances that are similar to this in other people's lives, about your childhood home or some of these other places that you grew up with and you remember, and what it's like when you go back 10, 20, 30 years later. Is it how you remembered it? Usually no, but there's still something there that pang of memory that still sticks with you. And this script does a really good job uh, handling that, and also providing a way for Miss Watts to move forward and to, still have nostalgia and still have those memories close to her of her former home, of her past, but also, sorry, for some reason this dang cat hair likes to migrate. Uh, but she has these memories, and that's enough to keep her going. She doesn't have to go back anymore because she has the memories of the good times and the the best moments, as well as the not so good moments that might have taken place in that home. And just the whole bit where she talks about how, yeah, Bountiful is a ghost town pretty much, and no one's really around anymore, and nobody's growing crops here, nobody's doing anything, the trees have taken over. But many years from now, people will migrate to Bountiful again, and they will start living here, and they'll take the trees down, and they'll cultivate the land, and the crops will grow again, and then they'll leave, and then the trees will come back. And it's just this cycle that is represented with that dialogue that I thought was really something. I wouldn't say unique, but it's definitely something that speaks to you. That, life, it tends to run in cycles. And I also like that there's a lot of character growth for certain characters in terms of what happens by the end of the movie. I like that there's different sort of twists. Like, I really didn't expect the sheriff to take Miss Watts to Bountiful. I didn't expect that to happen at all. And I like that with her son, his character, Ludi, he's a lot of ways kind of henpecked. He's kind of a cuck. But by the end of the movie, he finally sets things straight between him and his wife. And it tells his wife to just cut it out. Just get along with my mom. Stop fussing. Stop worrying all the time. Stop messing with her. It took him long enough, but eventually he does, which is a good character arc. And Jessie May also listens to him and finally changes her ways. At least it seems like she's willing to do that at the very least. And there definitely was an opportunity to make things really over the top in terms of how depressing it was. Like, I was expecting the worst. I was expecting Miss Watts because she even was insinuating that she would die in Bountiful, that she would get all stressed out because she doesn't want to leave, and then she would have a heart attack and die in her childhood home. But that's not what happened, which I was honestly surprised by, and pleasantly surprised by, because I expected the worst. I really did. It just kind of had that sort of vibe about it after a certain point. Because the reason why she was going to Bountiful was not just to see her childhood home again, but it was also to meet up with her friend, like the only friend that she has left in this world. And then she finds out on a part of her journey that her friend is dead. It's been dead for days. The funeral was actually recently. And it's like, man, that's just a bummer. And there's a lot of moments like this where it does. It makes you feel uh, pretty bittersweet and pretty sad. But at the same time, I think it's one of the best examples of a story that accurately depicts nostalgia in all of its forms. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, and it was refreshing to see that nostalgia isn't always like, oh my god, my childhood, it was the best time ever, and it was great, and I can't wait to go back to my old childhood home and see, what it looks like now. And then you go there, and then you're like, well, nothing's the same anymore. Exactly, because time has moved on, and that's a part of nostalgia that a lot of people don't necessarily talk about that much. And the way that I'm talking about this film, it sounds like it's just one big bummer. That's really not the case. I mean, there's some little moments of humor, not anything that's like super laugh out loud hilarious, but there's some moments of levity. And it's just the character of Miss Watts that is just really so charming and likable and sweet and kind, and how the script reveals more and more aspects of her personality, more and more bits of her backstory, just makes it a much more compelling narrative. And I do feel that it was a good idea to focus the story on her and her trip to Bountiful instead of other different characters. That being said, I do think some of the other supporting characters aren't that strong. Like Jessie May, maybe it's just the way that she's written in the script. I don't know about how it is in the play, but this character is a little too one note to me. Like there were attempts where it seems like she cares about Miss Watts when she has one of her spells and stays there in the apartment and checks up on her. But it doesn't really seem like that's something that feels like it's sincere. It just seems like, oh, I have to do this because otherwise, my husband, if he finds out that I wasn't there for his mom, we're going to have some problems in our relationship. So just kind of begrudgingly does it, because even she's like, oh, are you sure you're okay? Because if it's totally fine, I could stay here, but I would like to go see my friend. And then, of course, Miss Watts is like, no, it's fine, I'm okay. You go along. And yeah, that character, I just did not like that character at all. And so that really kind of hurt the story at times whenever it would try to focus on her or try to make you sympathize with her. I'm like, there's no reason to be sympathetic towards this character whatsoever. And even like her change of heart at the end, it also felt just not very genuine compared to a lot of the other aspects of the film. But to be honest, that's reality. There are people like that are that shallow and that self-centered and say that they're going to change, but they really won't. And the stuff with Ludi was fine, but I would say the best parts are the scenes with him and his mom, where they're just talking about the past. They're talking about when he was a kid, You know, there was a certain sweetness to that I definitely appreciated. And I also really liked the scenes with Miss Watts and Thelma. But yeah, it's not a story that's full of unpredictable twists and turns. It's not really something that has a ton of tension other than the whole idea that, oh, what if Miss Watts gets caught by her son and her son's wife before she goes to Bountiful? And there's like I will also admit there's a couple moments in the script that are a little off. Like, for instance, Miss Watts finds out that her friend passed away. And you never really see a moment where that sinks in for her throughout the film. Like other emotions sink in for other things throughout the movie, but not that particular one. Like when she's talking about her love of her life and how she never married him and how he married out of spite and she married some guy that never really loved her and she never loved him and she has all this regret and she's sad, but her friend dies and then it's like, oh, she's just like stunned for a little bit, sits down, and then she's singing hymns again and just being happy. And I'm kind of like, I don't really get that, but at the same time, maybe that's just how she carp, if I could fucking speak, how she winds up dealing with grief, which is something that differs for everyone. Like people handle grief differently, but I just thought I would expect to see a little bit more emotion since they were close friends, that she was friends with this woman since they were kids. And she was really excited to see her again. It was like the only friends that she had left in her life other than her son. And oh yeah, she's dead and her funeral was yesterday. And then it's just like sit down on the bench and just be like, oh, like it's just, you know, it just kind of felt like out of all of the moments in the script that are very authentic and feel very real, that didn't feel that real to me. But that's just how I deal with grief myself. Um, Especially if I hear it in the moment. But that's just me. And like I said, different forms of grief are handled and dealt with very differently by people. No one handles it the same way. But I just felt like it was almost like the film was building up to that moment where she was going to have like a cathartic release of emotion, and then that just didn't really happen at that time. Maybe they were waiting. Maybe the point of that with the script by Horton was he was waiting for her to have that release when she goes to Bountiful. And there was a little bit of that for sure. But yeah, the script is fine. It works for what the story is. It is very dialogue heavy, and I could see why some people might consider that a little bit dull and a little bit boring. But to me, it still worked. And the main reason why it worked for me, even though it's not a story that's one of my particular favorites, it's not a film that I would really watch again. But what made it work for a first time viewing and made it worth watching is Geraldine Page's performance as Miss Watts. Like, this performance was incredible. It was very down to earth. It was very relatable. There were a lot of emotions and a lot of nuances to it. It was a very complex and just a really impressive performance. There's a reason why she won an Oscar for this performance. After the film was over, I was like, did she get nominated for this? Like I honestly had my doubts. I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't get nominated because that's how the Academy is. But she did get nominated and she actually won. And I know some people that year they feel that Whoopi Goldberg was robbed. I disagree. Whoopi Goldberg was really good in The Color Purple, but I do not think in any capacity from what I saw that Geraldine Page was undeserving of her Best Actress Academy Award for her performance in this film. She carried this movie. The other cast members are fine. You know, John Hurd, it was nice to see him in a dramatic role, and I think he pulled it off really well as Ludi. And I feel the scenes between Geraldine and John were really good when it comes to the chemistry between the two. You really did buy that this was a real instance of a mother and her son. Carlin Glynn, on the other hand, I thought she kind of overdid it a little bit too much at times, kind of chewed the scenery, kind of was trying a little bit too hard to be this kind of bitchy character. Because that's really the interpretation that I got from it. Is that this character was just mean spirited, was two faced, said she wants the best for Miss Watson, her son, but really it's all about her and what she wants to do. And I think that I think that's the point of the character, but at times it just felt like she was a little too theatrical with it. Almost like she was playing it like it was a stage play and it wasn't a film. Like with a feature film, like you can be a little bit more understated, like Geraldine Page and John Hurd, and I think you get more authentic performances out of that, at least for a feature film. Acting on stage is a completely different thing, and yeah, I just got the vibe that what Carlin Glynn was bringing to it was very stagey, it was very theatrical, and would have liked to have like toned it down a little bit because everyone else was really even keeled, really consistent in terms of their performances. Like Richard Bradford as the sheriff, Rebecca De Mornay as Thelma. Um, it's kind of crazy to see Rebecca De Mornay play this role of this sweet girl who befriends this older lady on this bus ride. And she would go on to be known as like this femme fatale in The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Like the complete opposite of a sweet, kind woman. So yeah, the cast is fine, but definitely the biggest standout, the one that carries the movie, is Geraldine Page. And in all honesty, even if this isn't the kind of film that you're normally into, if you like authentic, strong performances by performers, this is worth a watch just to see Geraldine Page um, perform her magic here. She really brings this character to life in a way that makes it so authentic and real that it doesn't even seem like she's acting. It feels like you're just watching this old woman, this older lady named Miss Watts who's trying to go back home. The cinematography by Fred Murphy is fine. It works for the kind of film that it is. Same thing for the editing by Jay Freund. The music by J.C. Redford is another thing that fits the film well, but it's not really a composition that I think is great or grand or spectacular or something I would listen to again and again. There's this hymn that's repeated throughout the film in the opening credits and in the end credits, and also an instrumental version of it. So the score can get a little repetitive at times, I will have to admit, because it just uses this hymn over and over again. And I get why it does that, because it's that same hymn that Miss Watts likes to sing. But it does admittedly get a little repetitive when it comes to the music at times. But it still evokes a certain longing and a certain emotion when it needs to. The film's like 108 minutes, like it's an hour and 40 something minutes. There are points where it drags a little bit, but I wouldn't consider it to be completely dull. It's just you kind of know where it's going, and you're just kind of waiting for things to get to that point. But yeah, I would say it was a decent film. It was fine. It's not what I would consider to be a masterwork for me personally, but then again, I don't watch a lot of these films. or these kind of movies, so I don't really have a lot to compare it to. But it was worth a watch just for Geraldine Page alone, for sure. And to see John Hurd in a dramatic role. But anyway, that is my thoughts on the Trip to Bountiful. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.